Hello everybody, this is GamePro24X, and today I want to talk about the more in-depth mechanics when it comes to the performance of your crew in Metal Gear Survive. So I have been doing a lot of research and a lot of observations over the past month since this game has been released, and through all of my findings I want to share with you all what I have so far, and this is information that nobody is even talking about whatsoever, or people just flat out have incorrect. So to get started, we need a ground basis of what it takes to become a C or a B in your team. And thanks to the efforts of Kraken linked to the original post in the description, he has successfully data mined the game and has brought to us very valuable information, and I would say very incomplete information, because in his studies there were some things that he just couldn't put his finger on, which I believe that I may have figured out. So to quickly sum it up, we have an actual finite point value that it takes to become a certain rank. So the lowest you need for an E is 1, highest is 35. The moment you have a staff member or staff members that achieve a total of 36, you then become a D, and so on and so forth, all the way down to an S, which of course, to just get to an S, you just need to have above 1,456 points total, because then it just infinitely scales from there all the way up to 9,999. Now, in Kraken's research, he did manage to take a look at some of the unique characters' stats, since they don't change and it's the same for everyone else. But what he can't figure out is that for some people that are modists, they have a much different point value than what this chart is telling us. I don't remember exactly in the post it's located, but if you read through it, you will find that there is a point where he knows the certain point value for a modest, and he has tried to accurately measure that with getting like a B rank and such. And according to these notes, you need over 236 points to achieve a B. However, through his findings, the people that were naturally modest had like 18 points or something like that. It was a much different point system than what we are being led to believe. And due to that point system, it didn't look like it made sense, at least not at first. So I did some experimenting, and I did find somewhat of a correlation as to how to figure out people's true value, so to speak. So the best way for me to figure out this point system is by looking at the unique characters. So as we all know, Miranda is a positive in medical unit, and we all know that her by herself can actually bring up the medical unit up to a C. And according to the chart, the lowest points you need to achieve a C is 112 points. So we already know that if you have a staff member that is positive, they are at least above that. They are at least above 112. That is why we are getting the C. But the biggest question is, how do we figure that out? And how do we accurately measure and keep monitoring the situation as the game progresses? Because as you guys may have also noticed, at different times, Miranda's condition changes, and there are times when you can have her on the team all day if you want. Sometimes she'll bring it up to a C, other times she'll bring it down to a D. But why is that? And a lot of that heavily factors into the motivation along with the condition of the character. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth about that in a little bit, but I want to at least lay down the ground rules of how many points does a certain performance have. Now, currently, there is a way to actually see people's stats without having to like go into the game's code or anything like that. The game does tell you, but it's only for one unit, and that is exploration. When you assign people to the exploration team, everybody has their own combat score. But what I have noticed is that depending on their performance, they will have a certain amount of points within that range of performance. And I'm going to go ahead and go into detail on what exactly am I talking about. Now, do mind you, this is only for the exploration team. So any person that you put there, whatever performance they have is whatever performance they have for exploration. It doesn't tell us what it has for all the other things. However, due to all this testing, we can actually figure out a nice roadmap and a nice estimation of what kind of points are we looking at when you're assigning certain staff to certain teams. So after circulating and checking many staff, I have noticed a big correlation. But let's go ahead and go through some of my findings so far. So if you have a staff member that is doing poorly and you put them in the exploration team, they're going to have a number between 1 and 13. If you have a team member that has 14 all the way up to 38, they are technically not very well. And you will definitely see that when you read their performance. Now, where it says it's confirmed, it is legit. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. I have not seen a poorly that had 14 points in exploration and was still a poorly. So a lot of these confirmed numbers are legit confirmed, and so far there has been nothing that contradicts that. So now when you read the rest of my notes here for at least modest and positive, you see that I have a possible estimate of what the lowest and the highest numbers may be. And you might be wondering to yourself, well, where did I get these numbers? Well, I can safely assure you that I didn't just pull it out of my head. This is something that I've noticed through the research of figuring out poorly and not very well. So through my testing, I know for a fact what is the lowest and the highest values for both poorly and not very well. I do have half of the answers for modest, but let's just look at these two for an example. So as stated before, 1 is the lowest and 13 is the highest for a poorly. If somebody has 14 points, they are not very well, all the way up to 38. But if you actually look at the point difference between the two, you'll start to notice a pattern. For poorly, there's a 12-point difference between 1 and 13. For not very well, there's a 24-point difference between 14 and 38. With these findings, we could safely assume that the point difference doubles every single tier. So let's take a look at this chart again. So for a modest, the lowest that I've actually seen myself is a 39. And the highest that I've seen is is an 83. But my estimation is going to be an 87. Because when you double 24, you get 48. So if you add 48 to 39, you get 87. And so far, I haven't seen any staff member that was 88 and was still a modest. But again, the highest I have ever seen is an 83. So until we find an 87, we won't know if that's true. However, if you look at positive, my estimation for the lowest positive is an 88, and the highest is a 184. And down below is a small list of positives that I have seen in Exploration Team. So let's go ahead and take a look at Miranda one more time. Because Miranda does help prove my theory about the point values on each individual tier. So, as I mentioned before, as many of you already know and can verify yourselves in your own games, that Miranda, that has very high morale, that is in a T+ condition, she can individually bring up your team up to a C. However, if her condition changes for the worst, it brings it down to a D. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you have noticed that. Now, once again, in order to achieve a C rank, you need 112 points total. Well, clearly, Miranda has the aptitude to bring it up to a C by herself. So in her values, she has more than 112 to bring it up to a C. However, when her condition changes, it fluctuates downward, which would explain why it goes down to a D. So if it's going down to a D with just Miranda on the team, that means her points are fluctuating way below 112. Obviously not very far down, because as I predicted in my chart, the lowest is going to be 88 points, which obviously is not enough to attain a C. Now, every single individual character or survivor that you find has their own different point values. There are some people who are naturally higher than others, and there are others who are naturally lower. They may be in the same tier, but they do not have the same amount of points. Now, for those of you who have been using your manuals that you've gotten from Base Digs, have you ever noticed how some of your modest characters will take 1, maybe 2 manuals and they'll become a positive, and others will take 3 to 5 and they'll become a positive. That is because not everybody has the same exact point value. They're within the same tier, but they don't have the same natural point value. But this is data that I have yet to measure for myself, so I don't know how much of a manual actually like boosts up, like how many additional points it gives to your characters. So here are my predictions for adequate and best. And best was actually found out today, like 5 hours ago on the Reddit. So we do know that there was another tier after adequate and it's called best. But here is my predicted numbers for those 2 tiers. As you notice, best has a very, very high aptitude. Like it scales pretty damn high on the charts here. So essentially, if you have someone who is in the best tier and is at the maximum point value possible, he alone can bring up that team to an A rank. That's pretty insane. Now, until we find people that are best in exploration or adequate in exploration, we don't really know for sure. However, like I said, when you look back on the previous notes that I have gathered, there is a correlation, and games always tend to follow a pattern. Things don't just randomly change up for no reason. So if I were to give an actual ranking to every single performance, best would be an S and poorly would be an E. And at least with this type of order, you'll have a much better visualization of how well these people perform. Now, until we find something that's better than a best, we don't know if there is such thing as an S plus or an S plus plus. Furthermore, do mind you that this game is made off of Metal Gear Solid 5. And in Metal Gear Solid 5, they had a very similar point system for your staff. If people were in A rank, they're within a certain point value. And if they go above that point value, they become an S, or if they get below, they're a B, so on and so forth. So again, since this is not a carbon copy, but since this took a lot of the original game, it's pretty easy to assume that a lot of the original mechanics were also implemented into this game as well. Alright, so now let's also look at the other half of the equation, which is the morale and the condition of your staff members. Now again, let's take a look at Miranda one more time, because as I mentioned, she is, like, at least in this state, she is the most perfect example to explain all of my theories and all of the systems that I have brought to you in my video. So, as a lot of you may know, if Miranda has max morale and her condition is in a half Y pose, which is like one stage above the T pose, but not all the way where her arms are up, she's still in C rank. However, in this example here, my motivation is low, and she currently only has a D rank. And I've had her there for the past like 2 crew updates, and she has retained a D, which, again, a lot of you guys who have a similar Miranda with high morale and with the same exact condition will have a C rank with just her in that team. So with that simple observation, yes, motivation does play a very heavy role into how many points they have or how many points they're restricting themselves. It's really hard to tell. On top of that, condition also plays a factor as well. Thankfully, motivation is very easy to maintain. All you have to do is make sure you're in the positives in all of your food resources and such, and people will gradually gain their motivation up. However, condition is something that fluctuates all the time, like every single update. It seems that every single update, the condition will always change, always to an arms upward or downward. And if someone gets injured, that also affects their status as well. Now, motivation is super easy to maintain. You just need to make sure you're in the positive on every single food resource in your base, and you're good. However, condition is a whole nother story. That thing fluctuates all the time, every single update. So if you're at a T pose, you're basically at the best possible, you're practically at their peak. That's basically what it is. Because when they go up to a half Y, they can still maintain a C, like Miranda here could if I had more motivation, of course. However, the second the arms are raised all the way high, a full Y pose in the condition, you're now all of a sudden a D in medical team. And what's very strange about that is that it's highlighted blue, like very, very blue, as if it's like a good thing. Well, technically it's not, because again, if you have Miranda with very high morale on medical team and her arms are raised up very high, she's down to a D rank, which is bad. But if you truly want to see how much someone's condition heavily alters their performance, the next time someone on food supply or base defense is injured, go check your crew status. Make a note of what your current stats are, then go back and heal them and come back and check. And you will notice that a lot of your stats dramatically went back up. So when they are injured, their condition goes down. Their arms go down. Not all the way down, but like literally one tier before they're all the way down. And as we already know, at least from that simple observation that a lot of you can easily make, that condition heavily affected their performance, especially on those teams. Now, of course, condition can somewhat be managed. You just need to make sure you keep your staff nice and healthy and you heal them up. But the thing is, though, is that you can't really alter how high up the arms go, because the second they go up, the next crew update, they go back to a T-pose, which is at their peak. So my theory is that they're working hard and they get tired. Where the arms are fully up, that means they're tired and they're not performing as well. And the next crew update, they're fully rested and they're reset and they're back to normal. Because if you kind of look at it this way, look at it as if you're working hard at a job. Like if you're working at a job that requires a lot of manual labor, you can't work 7 days a week. Like, you're gonna tire yourself out. Some people might be tired a lot faster. Some people can go a little bit further. But generally, you will get tired. You will need a break. And if you have been working 6 out of those 7 days, you're going to be very tired at that 6th or 7th day, and you're not going to be performing at 100% capacity. Now, if you took a break in between, or you took 2 days of a break in between, you can come back 100% recharged. So at least if you try to put it in that kind of perspective, it makes sense. Obviously, it sucks that that's how kind of the system works, but it makes sense. Now, thankfully, not everybody on your team has the same exact condition. Some people are going to be very tired, and other people are going to be at their max. That is why you want to have multiple people on your team, because when your top players are tired and they're not performing at their best, you have other people that are around their level, maybe a tier below, that are working at their best to cover their slack. You see what I'm saying? So that is why when you have multiple people in a team, you never really notice your performance go up or down. So to quickly recap, in order to maintain good motivation, just stay positive in your food resources. And yes, your base development and food supply do contribute to that. So make sure you treat those guys good, and they'll treat the entire base good. And as for condition, ensure that your staff is healthy, or else their arms will go down and they will perform a lot worse than if their arms were a lot higher. And for a recap for the arms, each tier of the condition, basically, no matter what, they're always performing worse, no matter what position aside from the T-pose. But look at it this way. If the arms are going down, they're doing a lot worse than if their arms were going up. So essentially, do you want your crew to perform worse, or do you want them to perform slightly worse? That's basically what condition is. And so far, to my knowledge, there is no way to prevent people from having their arms be at the maximum height in a Y pose. Now, until a data miner actually figures out how much the motivation and the condition influences those individual point values, we don't know. But like I said, it is based on all the observations and all the testing. Obviously, it plays a huge role. We don't know how big, but we just know keep your guys healthy, keep your guys heavily motivated. Period. End of story. And with the point values that I have estimated and have actually found out for myself, you can accurately tell, okay, if I had 5 modists in this team, they will most likely be this if you're going from their lowest point value possible. Now, clearly, there's still a lot of things in my notes that still need to be answered. There's still a lot more research to do, but this is all the information that I have dug up so far. However, due to the community being as small as it is, there is, well, not a lot of people data mining the game. There's not a whole lot of people actually doing in-depth research like I am. So if I was just to continue doing this on my own, it will take a very, very long time to do this. It will take a very long time to figure out all the numbers and how to get everything done. So I want to propose a call to action for everybody in the community that wishes to help or has any information. I urge you to let us know any more of these findings and see if any of my notes are correct, if anything's incorrect, or whatever else you may have discovered. Because at the end of it all, when future players come and play this game, they're going to have a lot of these same questions as well, and they're going to want answers. And as a community, it's not essentially our job, but it does help immensely in terms of retaining players' attention or retaining new players to keep playing the game. When we have a lot of these very complicated mechanics figured out and help guide them and to show them, hey, this is why this system works or why this doesn't work. Because when you have a community that does that, you bring a lot more attention. I mean, take a look at Warframe, for example. Warframe's a very big free-to-play game. Can you imagine if we didn't have the Warframe wiki? Can you imagine how lost everybody would be without that information? And yes, the wiki is a number one stop place to figure out everything you need to know in the game. So I'm not saying every single game needs to have something like that, but if there are games like this that have complicated stuff that isn't really described to you or even shown to you that in depth, then it is up to the players to figure it out and teach the newcomers how it all works. And I can tell you from personal experience, I've played games that are very large, maybe not as big as Warframe, but big enough to where it's like, okay, is there like a wiki? Is there a place where I can find out hard research, hard notes? That way I know where to look for certain things and not just me fumbling around for hours upon hours and getting frustrated and possibly leaving the game. And yes, I have left a lot of those games behind because there wasn't that big of a community around it and there wasn't that many people really just keeping tabs and like leave behind a legacy and play the game with a lot less headaches and a lot less strain on figuring things out than the early adopters. So for any of you that want to actually double check my research and actually check with your own staff, here's some very easy things that you need to follow because you will make a mistake without this information. So the very first and very important thing you need to know is that when you give staff manuals and you have them go up to another tier, that does not alter their combat. So a good example is that if you had a not very well that had 18 points, you gave that person a few manuals and they became immodest at 18, well, guess what? That's not natural. You altered that, and of course, the expiration doesn't show it. And yes, it doesn't matter if you gave them expiration manuals and you changed it. It will not change. The number remains the same when you found them. So if you try to tell me that you have a modest at 18, I'm going to need pics or it didn't happen, because I guarantee you those people are the same people who gave them a bunch of manuals and didn't pay attention. Currently, the highest performance that you can find in-game is a positive. So that just happened last Tuesday. So that's going to be the most natural number you will find. So if you find positives and you put them in, if you find positives that are positive in expiration, and whatever their number is, note that and let me know. Also, on that same note, if you are planning to give expiration team manuals to bump them up to an adequate, note what number they are and note how many manuals you gave them that bumped them up to the next tier. Because from there, we might be able to figure out how many points each manual actually increases your staff. You can reply all the findings that you have from in the comments of this video or in the subreddit that I'm going to post this in. That way, we just are a lot more connected and we figure out more things a lot faster. However, if you did find something that heavily contradicts a lot of my findings and you're absolutely certain it is a contradiction, then I will need some type of picture proof, and I'll be more than happy to give you the info from my PSN or Xbox One or Steam, whatever you play on. I have that system, so I can easily obtain that screenshot from you from your system. Now, I've been doing this research for over a month, as you guys know, and I've been scouring the internet and especially the subreddit. So I definitely want to let everyone know on the subreddit, on the Discord, that I thank all those people for all of their own individual findings, and especially for Corewell and Krakenturn that gave me really helpful info that I was able to base a lot of my research on and was able to find a lot of interesting correlations that match almost perfectly to what they have found, but they could not have figured out. So a round of applause for those two. Thank you guys for your contribution. And if you are out there, your community needs you. And I hope you guys see this, and I hope you guys are out there still doing your thing. Now, there's still a lot of things that I haven't covered when it comes to the crew update, especially when it comes to the food supply buff. But I'm still doing research on that. But I really want to get the groundwork done. That way, it's all going to tie in together very nicely. I also realize that this video is not very flashy. It's not very, pretty. If you guys really care about that, I just wanted to throw you guys a lot of raw data and a lot of raw info that I just found out, or that I have been finding out throughout this entire lifespan that this game has been out. But until my research is 100% complete, I will do an actual proper video about how everything works. But until then, we have a lot of work to do. And here's the thing. Every time I've seen videos about how to manage a crew or how the crew thing works, absolutely nobody has went this in depth as much as I did. And I can already tell you many names off the top of my head, but I don't want to because it's not worth the effort. But a lot of these people want to sit there and claim that they have it all figured out. They know how it's done. No, they don't. They clearly don't know a whole lot of things. The only things they do tell you is just the basic info that you need to know. Oh, go farm for modists. Oh, give your manuals to modists. Make sure you're positive in food. Wow, great. What's next? You're going to tell me that the water is wet and the sky is blue? Everyone fucking knows that. But I too am not going to sit here and pretend that I have it all figured out or anything like that, because I don't. And you guys already know that. I was clear from the very beginning that I don't have it all figured out. That's why I am reaching out to everybody who has this game and is thinking about contributing to assist me in that, assist the community and all that. But you never know. Some new information can come out that can completely destroy my entire research, all my theories, everything. So until that happens, we don't know. A lot of people don't know definitively. We have some things that guide us, but we don't know 100% how this shit works. At least with my findings, we at least know maybe half of it. Who knows? We might even know maybe even 40% of it. But until we get it all figured out, I'm not going to act like I have it all figured out, and neither should anyone else. And I'm kind of tired of seeing that type of attitude whenever I watch these videos. So like I said, until then, I will make a proper video thoroughly detailing how every single little bit works when we get there. But that's enough of my little rant. I hope you guys found a lot of this stuff very interesting. And if any of you guys, again, find anything that either matches up to my findings or contradicts what my findings are, please feel free to discuss it. And don't forget, you can always donate to my Patreon, or you can also join my Discord server as well. We always have a lot of friendly people, and it's a very well-maintained community for anyone to come in, whether you play Survive or not. But this is GamePro24X. I can't wait to hear from most of you guys, and I will see you guys later.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.